So this isn't my first video that I've made. I actually got into the idea of making YouTube videos as kind of a marketing way to promote my new business that I started. I'm a speech therapist, and I've decided to transition into running a solo private practice. And I thought it would be a fun and unique way of just marketing some of the services that I have, showing off some expertise, showing off some techniques that we can utilize, providing free resources, and just creating an avenue for people who might be interested either in speech therapy in general, or in working with me specifically. I thought it would be a fun little side project, put the name out there, and generate some buzz and maybe get a client or two. And this whole process has been very eye-opening in terms of me realizing the past month and a half since I've kind of started this endeavor, just how burnt out I was with work, with life, with everything. And I guess the purpose of this video is to kind of act as a diary, but also to hold myself accountable for some changes that I really want to implement in my life. Because I'm 29 years old, I turn 30 next month, and in my short time on this planet, I realize now I cannot keep living the way that I have been. I am tired of constantly putting on this act and failing at it. And I'm just not cut out to be a normal person. And this past month and a half, almost 2 months, I have had the opportunity to take some time to myself, reflect on what that means, and actually start going through the mourning and grieving process for the life that I thought I would live and the life that I thought I could live. And it's been weird, and I don't want this to come off as any type of self-pity kind of thing. But it's been very eye-opening, very enlightening to recognize that I have to be gentler with myself. I have to be softer with myself, and I cannot keep pushing myself to the limit as much as I'd like to. I think in retrospect, and this is something I've been reflecting on a lot, I have always had this problem where I set really high expectations for myself, and I've done everything I can to try and accomplish a lot, try to achieve a lot. And I do think I have achieved a number of feats in my life so far. But even from an early age, like I was always obsessed with being perfect, which I logically understand is not something that's possible. No human is perfect. But I felt that I had this pressure on myself, and a lot of it I recognize now was my own insecurity putting that pressure on myself. And I think a lot of it was also very well intentioned and well meaning people in my life accidentally putting that pressure on me. And it just became a vicious feedback cycle. I remember in first grade, I had this assignment. I think it was a test. We had to write an essay, and I wrote about some family trip that we had. And, not to brag, but the teacher thought it was so good that she read it out loud to the whole class and basically made an example of it. This is where she wanted us to achieve. But in my mind, I remember in that moment it clicking in my head, oh, this is the new minimum expectation. This is the new baseline. And it can only go up from there. And having that pressure put on myself from a very young age, I think shaped a lot of my decisions and indecisions in terms of I always had to strive for the highest grade. I always had to strive for the best work produced. I had to be in competition with my peers. And it sucked. It sucked. Because one, I was not the smartest nor the hardest working kid in the school. Nor could I have been. Learning more about myself and reflecting on a lot of what has transpired to me over the past few years. Realizing that now, just even from a young age, I was dealing with so much sensory overload and so much miscommunication internally and externally that it was just that much more unreasonable and unfair that these high expectations were placed on me. And again, I think for the people who were around me in my life, I don't think they meant ill. I think they saw me as having great potential and not necessarily living up to it. At least not consistently. And I think I internalized that message and put that on myself as you are capable of great things. You can do anything that you put your mind to. So you should be able to do everything that you put your mind to. And I truly believe anyone can do anything, but everyone can't do everything. That's just not feasible. And I didn't understand that. And as I got older and the work became more complicated, just not even my academics, but also including my academics, but also just the work of being a human. I became very numb to the world. I became very isolated. I was just going through the motions on autopilot. And I think even when I started to break out of my shell, I did it within certain boundaries and constraints that I am only just now beginning to deconstruct. And I'm grateful for the friends and family that I have in my life. But I'll be honest, I feel like in 99% of those cases, I have friends because they picked me. I don't think I ever saw or met someone and was like, ooh, I'm going to befriend you. I got lucky. And that's probably something a lot of people who stumble onto this video, that's probably something that a lot of people who stumble onto this video might relate to. I was always the last one picked in gym class. I was always the last one picked in a team, picked in a group event. I was the leftovers. And I was fine with that. I was content because at one point, pretty early on, I had learned that that was my place in this world, and I accepted it. That I am supposed to achieve these great things, but in silence. That I should not be recognized for my achievements. That I should still do well, but not expect anything in return. I remember all throughout elementary school, during recess, during breaks, I did not play with the other kids. I would just sit on the bleachers or sit in the grass or just walk around and kind of live in my own little daydream fantasy world. I remember really immersing myself into reading and stories and playing games because I could make my own fantasy. I remember becoming obsessed with like stories of alien abductions and paranormal hauntings because it told me that maybe there was a world outside of this one that I could escape to. And I would just pretend I was living in certain movies like Jurassic Park, because I'd rather be on an island of bloodthirsty dinosaurs than have to go to school another day. I also just remember, as I got older, how excited I was to grow up, not because I was looking forward to being an adult, but because I was sick and tired of being a child. I look back pretty neutrally on my childhood. It was not a terrible childhood by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, my family did what they could. They tried their best. And I went to a good school. Good enough. But not once have I ever wanted to go back. Not once have I ever reminisced or been nostalgic. I could honestly forget my childhood, and I don't think it would impact me. And yeah, I didn't really start making friends until I got to high school. Uh, it's funny too, as I did kind of open up a little bit more and start to befriend people, or at least be friendly, um, there were on multiple occasions people who came up to me and were like, yo, yeah, we used to make fun of you behind your back. We thought you were weird. Um, I mean, I guess kudos that they felt comfortable enough around me to admit that. Um, I think it was when I got to high school that I learned I have to be performative. I have to put on an act in order to get people's attention, in order to get people to like me. And that was draining in its own way. And I kept that up through college, through undergrad, till I finished university, and then even into grad school. And there comes a point where years and years of stress, they just take a toll on you. And just all these other external factors kept building up. School became harder and harder as I got through different grades, different levels, from secondary to university to my master's program. And my family, God love them, but they were, and still are, dysfunctional. They've gotten a lot better over the years, but it was rough. It was dicey. And even then, I know that my parents were trying their best. It just sucks to recognize that maybe their best still wasn't good enough. And they were under a lot of stress. They had a very unhappy marriage. My mom was going back to school and she got her master's. My dad has PTSD. He's a 2-time war vet. My younger sibling had some severe chronic illnesses that was constantly landing him in the hospital. He had to miss a lot of school. The age gap between me and my older sister was very pronounced, and so she felt more like a second mother than a sibling, and I don't necessarily mean that in a good way. But they tried, and I do forgive them. I have forgiven them, I think. It's just something I'm still reflecting on and been thinking about it more lately. Because I don't think they meant any malice. I think they just did not know any better. But yeah. And then same thing for my teachers and my peers and my classmates and eventually my professors. Like, I was flying under the radar. And part of that was my own conscious decisions of not trying to attract too much attention to myself. Part of it was putting on an act, and like pretending to be this person that I knew I wasn't. Part of it was me not recognizing my own needs and just constantly being overwhelmed, even when I didn't realize it. And I had a couple breaking points. When I started cutting myself, that was when I first saw the psychologist. And that was an interesting experience. I mean, I felt okay, but I only saw him for a couple sessions when I started to deal with disordered eating. that was rough. And then I fell down that black hole of like productivity and like being the best person, waking up at 5 a.m., going to the gym every day. And like, don't get me wrong, I was probably physically the healthiest and the best looking I ever had been in my life. And I was definitely the most productive. That semester I had straight A's. That was my sophomore year of undergrad, going into my junior year. And I had never felt more mentally miserable. Definitely got myself into some social situations that, not that I regret because everything was a learning experience, but like getting arrested, that was interesting. That was a fun time. And my gut had told me, don't go out with this person. But at that point, I had learned to ignore my gut. I had been, at that point, explicitly and intrinsically told from multiple people, do not follow your gut instinct. Use other people's common sense. Use other external rationale and validation to guide you. So that was a wake-up call. The pandemic sucked. Literally the week I got accepted to grad school was when lockdown happened. Not being able to keep a job for longer than a few months at a time, constantly bouncing around and giving my all to a job because it's new and it's fun and I get excited by the novelty. And then suddenly when it wears out, I realize how overwhelmed I am and how much effort I've put in and how it's not being rewarded in kind. And then it all just feels like a waste of time. I mean, working through my lunch breaks as a housekeeper in high school, burning myself out at every food service job I had, except the one. The one that was the small shop in town, best job I ever had. It was a mom and pop shop. It was family owned. The boss was like a mother to me in a good way. God bless her. God bless them. They were the best job I ever had. And the only reason I don't have that job is truly because they sold the business and they closed and opened under new management. Every other job, either I quit, was let go, was fired, or it was like a contracted thing where like I knew there was a set end date. I also did not pick sensory-friendly careers. Being a speech therapist is like my third career. Like I originally went to school to be a history teacher. And growing up, I wanted to be an architect. I loved designing homes, buildings, interior design, exterior design. Again, I was obsessed with The Sims. I love The Sims for two reasons. One, I loved building and designing homes. Two, social interaction in a video game is so easy because there's limited choices and you can predict what the outcome is going to be. There's no real nuance. There's no like constantly changing formula. It is clear cut and dry. You do X, here comes Y. You do A, here comes B. Like easy, straightforward. Loved it. Ended up giving up on that architect dream because I struggled and continue to struggle with numbers. Mathematics has always been my weak spot. Almost every other course, I could either put in minimal work and just coast by and thrive, or I had to put in hard work, but I caught on pretty quickly what was going on and I understood it, at least for my grade school years. Grad school is a different beast. But no, since like sixth grade, I have barely passed every math course that I've ever taken. So then I decided to be a history teacher because I like history, because I like storytelling, and I like seeing patterns, and I like recognizing how the past affects the present and the future, and following those threads. But teaching is not a sensory friendly environment, especially if you're in a big public school classroom. I loved certain things about teaching. I still think I'm a teacher at heart. I just took on a student last year to train her for her clinical placement while she was in grad school. So I was a supervisor and I had the best time. It was a ball. I loved it. Like, I truly love the act of teaching. Especially when someone wants to learn and they're set up for success and you can set them up for success and you can pull on resources and you can pull on help and just facilitate the learning process. I think when done correctly, teaching is one of the most beautiful and noble professions. Unfortunately, in our current world, a lot of teaching is not teaching. It's behavior management and keeping your kids in compliance, keeping your paperwork in compliance, and meeting unrealistic standards. And doing it in very sensory unfriendly environments where everyone's screaming, there's noises and smells, and it's very overwhelming and you can't take a break. So I burnt out from that. My student teaching experience, I don't regret it. I learned a lot. When I tell you my sleep schedule was never more messed up than during my student teaching, to the point where I would go to school/work, teach the classes, check in with my preceptor, my supervising teacher, go to my university classes, and then immediately come home and just go to sleep. And sleep for 10, 12 hours straight. Wake up still exhausted, and then scramble in that last hour or two in the morning to get my schoolwork done and prep for the next day. That was rough. My gap year was great, even though I was teaching. I was teaching English abroad. Because I was the foreigner, there was kind of an expectation socially that I was the outsider. And so everyone around me communicated with me differently. But in a way, it was refreshing. They made things very obvious for me. They made instructions very simple. A lot of the demands of day-to-day life were kind of taken off my plate. I had a host family that I was staying with, which was really good. And it wasn't anything that I was entirely unfamiliar with. I come from a Latin American cultural background, and I was in South America. So, I wasn't completely unfamiliar. I could speak a little bit of Spanish, and I got really well after that experience. But there still was an expectation, this is a different culture than from where you grew up in the US. This is a different lifestyle. you are the foreigner in a foreign land. And I knew that, and everyone else around me knew that. And it actually made communication and meeting my needs simplified. It made it easy. There were no presumptions. No one was assuming I knew how to do something. No one assumed that I could or couldn't do something. They were very much of, all right, show us what you can do, and we will come in and help you where we see that you're struggling. Whether that was the language barrier, whether that was my work responsibilities, whether that was just social customs. And even then, I had a moment down there. I was there for about like 5-6 months. So this was probably like the 3 or 4 month mark, where I had a burnout moment where it just became a little bit too much. And I felt guilty about it because I had gone on this trip with these people who I was trying to impress and be friendly with. And I feel like I kind of made a fool of myself, and I got sick, and it was a whole thing. But no regrets. You live in the past. I have no regrets over any relationships I've had, friendships, professional relationships, romantic relationships. Everything has taught me something. Everyone has taught me something. And I can't beat myself up about the past because it is what it is. But yeah, I think also that's why I really liked doing improv comedy, because you're constantly putting on a new mask, but it's meant to be funny and it's meant to be exaggerated, and you don't stay in the scene for that long. So when you start to get tired of it, or if you start to get overwhelmed, you can just call it quits right there. Obviously within the rules and structures of like whatever specific activity or game you're playing, but you know, you're not beholden to that character if you don't want to be anymore. Whereas the character I had made for myself, I was beholden to. Grad school was rough. I was academically challenged across the board. And I felt like I still went in with an advantage because I had experience teaching and being in the education system. I had roommates and friends that were now doctors and nurse practitioners and psychiatrists. So I got a little taste of the medical side, just living with them. But it was overwhelming. Grad school was when I first started taking meds. They put me on Wellbutrin, and I've been on again, off again with Wellbutrin for a while. I'm currently in an off period. But it was just the stress of grad school and being in a program that I do think was on an accelerated timeline, if I remember correctly. It was supposed to be 3 years, but I think our cohort was going to do it in 2. And then doing it all on Zoom, doing it virtually because of the pandemic, and like not having any social outings, not having that creative outlet, just being trapped in my apartment, going stir crazy. I am not surprised that I tried to off myself. And the psych ward was the worst vacation I ever needed. When I tell you I came back from that holiday refreshed, ready to go, and for a few months I was on my A game. I was taking Seroquel, I was taking Prozac, I was taking Strattera. I think the generic names for those are Kediapine, Fluoxetine, and Atomoxetine. Yeah. For a few months I was doing well. But then life happens. My childhood dog, who had been with me by my whole side through all this adventure, he was my soul dog. We got him when I was like late middle, early high school. He was with me through college. He was with me when my family moved to Florida. Um, he was with me when I moved back to Pennsylvania in order to go to grad school. He died, and then insurance cut me off my meds. So obviously I started spiraling. Barely graduated grad school. Could not stay on top of my paperwork, could not stay on top of my schoolwork. Almost got kicked out because there was an issue that I failed a class, but I was supposed to drop it, but I had forgotten that I even signed up for the class, but I had to sign up for it even though I didn't need the credits for tuition purposes, and there was just a whole bunch of miscommunication. And I could not understand for the life of me why I was getting in trouble. I mean, in retrospect, now I kind of understand. But in the moment, it was rough. And so I had a job offer rescinded, and I had to dog sit for a while just to make ends meet. And thank God my friend was helping me pay my rent. We lived together. She was helping me pay my half of the rent. And I paid her back once I got a job. But that was a rough couple months. This is also how I know that my current partner is like my soulmate, because he stood by my side while I was mentally sick. He has stayed by my side while I was physically sick and got hospitalized last year. He has stayed by my side through financial troubles when I was broke, couldn't even afford the rent. And he stood by my side when I was grieving. I think he got it from somewhere, but he said, someone loves you when they stay by you when you're sick, grieving, and broke, or something like that. And so now we're planning a wedding. And planning a wedding is fun, but it's also very stressful. I've been reflecting on that too these past few months. And I mean, we have a venue picked. We've already put the down payment on it. But like, my God, is it so much work? I just want to like pass it all off to my mother-in-law and my older sister and my bridesmaids and just be like, you take care of it. But I also have control issues. I'm a control freak. So I'm like, I can't let them do that. Like, I have to be on top of this. And I keep debating if I should go back to my old job or not. And I know they'll take me back. I know they will. I lasted as a speech teacher in the schools. It was my last attempt at giving the schools one more shot. I was like, maybe I just need my own room. I didn't get my own room. I had to share it with the special education literacy teacher and another special education teacher, and then sometimes it would be used for storage. But, I don't regret doing my clinical fellowship in the schools. I had a great learning experience. I made some good friends, professional work acquaintances, and I learned a lot. But my God, was I every day sensory overload. That was when I bit the bullet and had to get back on meds. I was like, I know I've been off of these for a while now. I don't think I'm going to make it to the end of the school year unless I get on some medication. And then after that, I did a work from home job for a couple months, and I hated it. I was severely underpaid, but also my coworkers, bless their souls, some of them were very intense, and I was going stir crazy. I was going very stir crazy, and I hated my job in that the expectations and demands were changing on a daily basis. But that's what you get when you work for tech. Um, I also, I don't want to say I regret because I really try to live my life with no regrets, but I am pretty anti AI, and finding out going into this job that we were training what eventually would become Gemini, I feel a little guilt about that. Not gonna lie. Uh, I'm trying to be neutral about AI, but it's hard. But after that, I did 2 years between part time and full time, 2 years at the local nursing homes, skilled nursing, long term care, just to keep my medical speech skills fresh. And I'll be honest, there were days where I loved it. I loved it more days than not. That is by far the longest I have ever stayed in a single job. And I have so many fond memories. Coworkers, like truly some of the best coworkers I've ever had, some of the best bosses I've ever had, my directors of rehab, like at this point, like older sisters. Um, and some of the long term care residents, like, they hold such a special place in my heart. But it got to a point where it was just too much. It became a sensory overloading experience. Go to a nursing home. Go to a skilled nursing facility. You will smell smells you've never smelled before. You will hear things. You will see things. In many ways, it's like a school. Because in many ways, the elderly are just grown children, especially in the dementia unit. But, I wouldn't trade the experience for anything. But I just don't know if I have it in me to go back. And then also this past 2 months, my grandmother, the matriarch of my mother's side of the family, she died after a bout with dementia and illness, and she had not taken care of herself the best. And that's another thing that I'm also afraid of, because substance abuse runs in both sides of my family. And I think maybe she dealt with a lot of the pain by self-medicating, and that's what caused her failing health in her older years. And I don't want that to happen to me. Because when I tell you, I was / to a degree still am a bit of a drinker, and I don't want to be, but I also don't know how to break that habit, because I do feel like, especially on the bad days at work, that's the only way I can unwind. And so I've been really trying to, since the new year, like get back into exercise, get back into eating right, get back into being healthy. And like, I want to look good for my wedding. I do. There's some vanity behind this, but there's also genuine change. And I think this whole reflection and rant kind of boils down to, I cannot keep living the way that I have been. I cannot keep going through these cycles of intense productivity and novelty and being on my A game, and then slowly but surely falling apart, and then jumping at the next new thing. It's not sustainable. I want to have longevity in my career. I like being an SLP. I want to get involved in more research. I want to run my own private practice successfully. I want to be financially stable. I want to provide for me and my partner and our potential future kids. I want to not have to rely on the kindness and generosity of friends and families and strangers in order to just survive. I want to be able to wake up and feel invigorated by my life. I don't want a life that I have to numb myself to. I want to have a life that I look forward to engaging in. I want to do work that satisfies me. I want to do work that I feel is ethical and fulfilling and makes me proud of what I do and serves a greater purpose. And I think for me, I really like helping people be able to communicate, whether they lost those communication skills in the first place or they didn't have them to begin with. But I also question my ability to do this. And I think this was something that was also questioned by other people in my grad school experience. If I myself have communication issues, am I really the right person to help others? And after some reflection, I do think the answer is yes, because I know firsthand what those issues are, where they stem from, and how we can approach them. And I do think, to some degree, we need to learn how to manage our lives while keeping a certain baseline. But I also think we're better served learning how to advocate for ourselves and change the world around us to be more accommodating and more accepting. And that's what I want to do. I want to teach people and give them the skills so that they in their lives can advocate for themselves, put up the boundaries that they need to put up, tear down the boundaries that need to be torn down, and tell the rest of their friends, their family, and their societies, and the society we all participate in, we are not going to do it the old way anymore. You need to hear us out, and you need to adjust. I truly believe that for many disabled people, the issue is not that they are disabled, it is that society disables them. That if they were given the proper supports and accommodations, and if the systemic barriers were removed, they could thrive. And I'm just trying to find my place in that solution as someone who is disabled. When I got sent to the psych ward, I was officially diagnosed with ADHD. And leading up to my admission, when I was working with emergency psychologists, I was diagnosed with social communication disorder. And I have those two official diagnoses. Also, given my history of sensory issues, I have reason to believe that I probably do have some sort of sensory processing problem that's just gone undiagnosed. Or maybe I'm autistic. I don't know. Hard to say. I also have this very specialized, nuanced, and intensive training in how to be a communication specialist. And I think it would be a shame if I didn't at least try to do something with that. And I do think I'm still a teacher at heart, and I have many passions, but I just want to be able to teach the world that those of us that cannot live a normal life can still live a good life. And I know normal's subjective, but I think most people watching this would understand that I'm coming from the point of view of working a 9 to 5, being socially active, being friendly and nuanced with strangers, and understanding multiple perspectives. And not that I can't do those things, not that we can't do those things, we just do them differently. Different from the norm. I guess in a way, kind of going back to my original point, the reason I started making YouTube videos was to kind of advertise my business. So, shameless plug-in, I will attach the links below. If you feel like that I am someone you could possibly work with, that you have any sort of communication need that a speech therapist can work with, I specialize in functional communication for people with cognitive deficits, with neurodegenerative disorders, augmentative and alternative communication modalities, autism spectrum disorder, executive functioning, aging, dementia, fluency, stuttering, voice therapy for neurodegenerative conditions like Parkinson's, queer and trans affirming voice therapy. Those are kind of like my specialty niches that either I have a lot of experience, a lot of interest, or both. But that's kind of what I feel I have the expertise in. And I have experience in other things too. I can do swallowing, I can do dysphagia, a lot of it in the nursing homes. But like, if you feel like you have a communication need and you think that you need to work with a speech therapist who understands where you're coming from, and I could be one of those people, let me know. And regardless of if you will like hire my services or anyone's services, because I'm not the only one, do what you need to do. And if you're not ready, go at your own pace. But know you're not alone. There are plenty of us that are doing their best to not just survive, but thrive. And I do like to think I am somewhat proof. I'm a work in progress of that. Because I have come to the realization that I cannot keep living the way that I was living. And there's a lot about the way that I was living into how I am still living that I am proud of. Because I have managed to get a master's degree. I have managed to build a resume with a varied work history. I have managed to make genuine friendships and connections with people. I mean, I'm getting married. That has to account for something. And I have a roof over my head. and clothes on my back and and a fridge full of food. And I'm living comfortably. But I know I could be living better. And I think that's the other purpose of making this content, is to hold myself accountable, to try my best, maybe not give my 100% all the time, because that's impossible, but do what I can given my circumstances to try and either break free of this rat race or make my own that is functional for my needs. So let me know what your thoughts are on that. I'd love to connect with some of you, as many of you as possible. Like I said, shameless plug. You're interested in working with me? I got another channel. I got a website. I will put this information in the below. These past 2 months of fun employment have been very eye-opening and have forced me to reflect on a lot of good that I've been doing and a lot of not so good that I've been doing. And I just want to be a happy, healthy person that does good work and helps other people. And my guess is most, if not everyone who's watching this, probably just wants the same thing for themselves. To be happy, to be healthy, to be content, and to live your life in a way that is honoring your needs, that is functional to the life you want to live, and that at the very least does not hurt others, if not outright help them. So let me know your thoughts. Have a good one.